At 7:14 on a bright Monday morning, single father Rowan Mercer opened his eyes and realized he was lying in the bedroom of the woman who could fire him with one phone call. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar, the sheets were impossibly soft, and on the chair beside the enormous windows sat his wrinkled suit jacket from the company party the night before. Then the bedroom door opened, and there stood Seraphina Vale, the youngest CEO in the company's history, holding 2 cups of coffee with a small smile on her face. She looked at him, then at the bed, and calmly said, "Last night was fun." Rowan's heart nearly stopped. He remembered the party. He remembered the laughter, the music, the rain outside, and the moment he had helped Seraphina when she was overwhelmed by the crowd. But he remembered nothing after leaving the ballroom. And the most frightening part was not waking up in her bedroom. It was the thought of what everyone at work would say if they found out. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can give people a second chance when life has nearly broken them, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the person who looks strongest in the room may secretly be the one who needs kindness the most. Rowan was 37 years old, a quiet operations manager who had learned to live carefully after losing his wife several years earlier. His greatest responsibility was his 8-year-old son, Milo, a bright, curious boy who had a habit of asking difficult questions at the worst possible moments. Rowan's apartment was small, his car was old, and his bank account rarely looked comfortable, but he had built a life around one simple promise: Milo would never feel the emptiness that Rowan himself carried. Every morning, Rowan packed his son's lunch before going to work. Every evening, he hurried home to help with homework, cook dinner, and listen to Milo explain whatever adventure had happened at school that day. He did not have the luxury of making reckless decisions. One mistake could mean missed rent, unpaid bills, or telling his son that something he had promised was suddenly impossible. Seraphina Vale lived on the opposite end of that world. At 34, she was the CEO of Vale Meridian Group, a rapidly growing company that employed thousands of people. She was known for being brilliant, demanding, and nearly impossible to impress. Newspapers called her fearless. Employees called her intimidating. Business competitors called her ruthless. Almost nobody knew that behind her polished suits and controlled expressions was a woman who had spent years trying to prove she was more than her father's daughter. Her father had founded the company, and after his sudden retirement, Seraphina had taken over. Every mistake she made became a headline. Every emotional decision was treated as weakness. So she had learned to keep everyone at a distance. The annual company celebration was supposed to be harmless. There was music, food, decorations, and a rooftop terrace overlooking the city. Rowan attended because his department expected everyone to be present, but he planned to leave early. Instead, he noticed Seraphina standing alone near a quiet hallway, staring through a glass wall at the crowded ballroom. She looked completely different without the confident expression she wore in meetings. She looked tired. Rowan did not approach her because she was his CEO. He approached because he recognized loneliness when he saw it. He quietly offered her a glass of water and told her she did not have to stay where she was uncomfortable. That small act surprised her. For the first time that evening, someone had spoken to Seraphina without wanting something from her. The two spent much of the evening talking in a quiet corner. Rowan told her about Milo, about packing lunches, school projects, and the endless challenge of raising a child while trying to keep a career alive. Seraphina listened more than she spoke. Eventually, she admitted that she sometimes went home to a beautiful house that felt colder than an empty office. Rowan did not try to fix her loneliness. He simply listened. Later, when the party became louder and the rain began falling outside, Rowan helped her step away from the crowd. They talked, laughed, and shared stories they had never told anyone at work. Nothing inappropriate happened. They simply discovered that beneath their completely different lives were two people who understood what it meant to carry responsibility alone. When the evening ended, Seraphina had consumed more alcohol than she should have, and Rowan, who had barely touched his own drink, decided she should not drive. He arranged for her security driver to take her home and stayed nearby until he knew she was safe. But somewhere between the lobby and the private elevator, Seraphina became exhausted. Her assistant had already left for the night, and Rowan helped her upstairs because she was struggling to remain steady. Seraphina insisted that Rowan take the guest bedroom rather than attempt to drive home through the heavy rain. He agreed. At some point during the night, exhausted from the long evening, Rowan accidentally fell asleep in the main bedroom after making sure Seraphina was comfortable in the adjoining sitting room. The details were innocent, but the scene the next morning looked anything but innocent. That was why Rowan froze when Seraphina entered carrying coffee. He immediately sat upright and began explaining himself, but she stopped him with a reassuring expression. She told him nothing had happened between them and that he had spent the night sleeping after making sure she was safe. Her teasing remark had only been designed to watch his terrified reaction. Rowan finally breathed again. Then his phone began vibrating repeatedly. Messages from coworkers filled the screen. Someone had seen him entering Seraphina's private residence. Rumors were already spreading through the company. By the time Rowan arrived at work, the whispers were everywhere. Some people believed he had manipulated the CEO. Others assumed Seraphina had given him special treatment. A few laughed behind his back. Rowan tried to ignore it, but then his supervisor called him into a conference room. The company had strict policies regarding conflicts of interest, and even an innocent situation could create a serious problem. Rowan explained everything honestly, refusing to exaggerate or hide anything. He expected to be suspended. Instead, Seraphina walked into the room. She had already heard the rumors. Rather than allowing Rowan to carry the blame alone, she announced that she had personally asked him to stay because she was unwell and that Rowan had behaved responsibly throughout the entire evening. She also made it clear that no employee would be punished because of gossip. The room fell silent. Seraphina then did something nobody expected. She apologized to Rowan for the position her careless joke had placed him in. But the situation became more complicated when a board member discovered that Rowan had recently been selected for a major management project. Suddenly, people questioned whether Seraphina had favored him. Rowan was devastated. He had worked for years to earn every promotion, and now people were reducing his entire career to one night. He went home that evening ready to resign. Milo noticed immediately that something was wrong. Rowan sat at the kitchen table staring at his untouched dinner while his son quietly placed a glass of water beside him. Milo asked whether his father had done something bad. Rowan told him that sometimes people could believe something about you even when it wasn't true. Milo thought for a moment before answering that his teacher always said people should judge you by what you do, not by what people say. The simplicity of his son's answer broke through Rowan's defenses. The next morning, Rowan returned to work. Instead of resigning, he asked for an independent review of the project. He wanted every decision examined so nobody could claim he had received special treatment. Seraphina agreed. For several weeks, Rowan worked harder than ever. He arrived early, stayed focused, and refused every shortcut. Slowly, the rumors began to disappear because there was nothing behind them. Then the company faced a serious crisis. A major client threatened to cancel a contract because a logistics failure had delayed a critical shipment. Millions of dollars were at risk. Senior executives argued over expensive solutions, but Rowan noticed something everyone else had missed. The problem was not the entire supply chain. It was one small communication failure between two regional offices. He proposed a simple solution that could be implemented within hours. Seraphina trusted him. The plan worked. The contract was saved, hundreds of employees avoided layoffs, and the company received praise from the client for its quick response. For the first time, the board saw Rowan not as the single father involved in an embarrassing rumor, but as the talented professional he had always been. Seraphina, however, realized something even more important. Rowan had never needed rescuing. He had needed someone to believe that his integrity was real. Their relationship changed slowly after that. They remained careful, professional, and respectful. Seraphina began understanding that kindness did not make someone weak. Rowan learned that accepting help did not make him less of a father. And eventually, Seraphina became a familiar face at Milo's school events, always sitting quietly in the back row, cheering when he performed. One afternoon, Milo handed Seraphina a small drawing of 3 people standing beneath a bright blue sky. Rowan asked who the third person was supposed to be. Milo smiled and said it was someone who had become part of their family. Rowan looked at Seraphina. For once, neither of them needed words. Months later, Rowan received an offer to become director of operations. He accepted it only after an independent committee approved the promotion. Seraphina had deliberately removed herself from the decision so nobody could ever question his achievement again. And when Rowan finally asked why she had gone so far to protect his reputation, Seraphina simply told him that on the night of the company party, he had treated her like a human being when everyone else treated her like a CEO. He had shown kindness without expecting anything in return. She had spent years believing power was what kept people safe. Rowan had shown her that sometimes kindness did. Years later, Rowan would remember that strange Monday morning differently. It had begun with fear, embarrassment, and the possibility of losing everything he had worked for. But it had also become the beginning of something neither he nor Seraphina expected. Not a perfect fairy tale, but something much more meaningful: 2 adults learning to trust again, a little boy finding another person who cared about him, and a family built not from convenience, wealth, or appearances, but from patience and kindness. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes that people deserve second chances, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Your support helps us continue telling stories about ordinary people who discover extraordinary strength when life tests them. And before the ending, here is a special request: comment, "Kindness changes everything," below if you believe one small act of kindness can completely change the direction of someone's life. Because sometimes the most important moment in a person's life does not look important at all. Sometimes it is simply offering someone a glass of water when they are overwhelmed. Sometimes it is listening when everyone else is judging. And sometimes, when you think your life has become a complete mess, you wake up in an unfamiliar room and discover that the person you thought might destroy your future is actually the person who will help you believe in it again. That morning, Rowan woke up expecting his biggest problem to be the woman beside him. Instead, he discovered that she might become the reason he stopped carrying every burden alone.